No. Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning with the Bainbridge Island Senior Center, Something to Talk About. Please consider adding the Bainbridge Island Senior Center to your giving through One Call for All. But today I want to welcome Irma Supli to share her beautiful close-up photos and describe how she took them. Good morning, Irma.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone else who's on this call. And I'm delighted to be here. Hello all. And I was asked to introduce myself, so of course you know my name. And I've been living on the island for the past 26 years. And this is actually the second time we've been on the island, but the first time was only for a year. And it took us 3 years to get back once we had left the island at that time. So anyway, we are very glad to be on the island. It's a beautiful place to live. And I have been with the photo club for the past 3 years. And the reason I joined was to improve my photography skills, to get, information from other good photographers, and to have a congenial group that I could be a member of. And so with that introduction, I would like to show you my photographs of what I took in my garden. Well, all right. So I said hello to everyone, and I would like for you to accept a hello from our brown-lipped snail. And I found this little guy while I was weeding. So I picked it up. And of course, as you can see, he's very, very shy. And the reason he's called a brown-lipped snail is not because I found his lips, which I don't know where they are, but it's because on the shell, there's a brown streak, and that's what they named it, as a brown-lipped snail. So he is one of the prettiest ones that I found in the yard. And he's actually quite small. I have a shell of a brown-lipped snail, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It is very, very tiny. Can you all see this? Mm-hmm. Yes? Shake your head? Mm-hmm. Nope. Anyway, he's very, very, very tiny. Probably about, maybe 3/4 of an inch long. Mm-hmm. So, doing macro photography, you can get really, really nicely close to them. The one trouble with macro photography, oh dear. The one trouble with macro photography is that sometimes you can't get everything in total focus. So please excuse that, but the whole idea is to at least get the eye in focus, and I do have his one little eye in focus. Mm-hmm. So
beautiful. It looks very focused to me.
Well, wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Let me know when you want me to change screens.
Okay, next, please.
Next.
Now this is, of course, everyone knows what this is. This is an ant. And it's very difficult, at least for me, to get an ant picture because they move pretty quickly. And so I was fortunate to capture this one. I believe it is a male carpenter ant. If I'm wrong, please correct me because I'm not that familiar with ants. But he was on one of my flowers and was willing to pose, so I finally got myself a picture of this ant. Ready for the next one.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh.
Now this little guy, of course, everybody knows, is a Pacific tree frog. And he lived in one of my vegetable bins that I was growing on my deck. And he'd pop on and pop off. And this day, I decided, all right, if you're going to live here, you're going to pay back and you're going to pose for me. So of course, getting a frog to pose is a little bit of a problem. So I ended up holding it while I was trying to get this photograph. And he looks like he's ready to crawl up my hand. But anyway, the one thing that is interesting about the tree frog is, first of all, they live all up and down the Pacific coast. And so anyway, the really interesting thing about them is they're so little, but at the same time, they have a really, really big voice. And that really, really big voice has been featured in a number of movies where frog sounds were needed. Next, please.
Yes, I love that sound.
Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not really afraid of spiders. I know I have some friends who are terrified of spiders. And this one was hanging around right in front of our sliding glass door at the house. And I just loved its colors. And then when I looked at it, I says, I don't know how you do that the blood doesn't rush to your head, you know, standing on your head all day. Anyway, I thought he was quite beautiful. Now, these are from Europe. They are not harmful to native populations. It is not harmful to humans, but it is a steadfast sentry in the garden, helping keep pests from destroying plants. So if you see these spiders, encourage them to be around your house if you want to spare your plants. Next one.
Irma, are those the ones that make a lot of webs in the fall?
You know, this was earlier on in the year. Most of these photos are from earlier on in the year, but they were all over. They would actually spin their web in between plants. I found this, as I said, in front of a sliding door right by the deck, on the deck. So they were close to the house.
Yes. Oh, it's gorgeous.
I'm thinking maybe it was minding my my planters.
Yes. Oh, well, that's the thing. We love our spider helpers.
I do. Next.
Okay. There we go. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, this little guy is called the yellow-spotted millipede, also known as a cyanide millipede. And the reason it's known as a cyanide millipede is because it contains cyanide to fend off its enemies. Now, when I first picked him up, because he was one that I picked up and decided that I needed to get him to model for me. So my husband said, well, what is it? And I says, I think it's a millipede. And he says, that's a good thing, because if it was a centipede, it would bite you and that could be harmful. So I said, okay, well, this guy isn't going to bite me. Obviously he didn't, but he did some tricks for me. But this was the best photo that I got of him. When I picked him up, he would curl into an S shape, or he would curl into a ball. And it took me a little bit of time to get him to straighten out and start walking down that leaf so I could actually get his picture. So he wasn't a totally cooperative specimen, but in the end, he was willing to let me take his photograph.
Absolutely gorgeous. You ready? Next one?
I'm ready.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
So this one is, of course, another one that I found underground while I was working in the yard. And he is a brown garden snail. So I think he's quite a pretty snail. But what I'm understanding is that he's considered a pest and very damaging to hostas. So I now know why every time I've tried to have hostas in my yard, they get chewed up. And I thought it was the deer, but maybe it was this guy. But don't you think that he looks like I ought to be able to find maybe a half a dozen more and consider them escargot? But I find it to be a very pretty, pretty shell and a very pretty snail.
Gorgeous.
Next one.
Oh.
Now this little guy is known as a zebra jumping spider. And my husband and I were sitting out on the deck. And we have a little table that has a glass top to it. And I found this thing under the glass. I'm thinking, what in the world is that? So I took it and put it on top of the glass table. And sure enough, it did a little hopping up and down. It managed to stay still long enough for me to get a relatively blurry picture, but I got his eyes. And the interesting thing about this is I'm thinking it's a female from what I could find on the internet. It is widespread in Britain, Europe, and North America. And the interesting thing is they don't build webs, but they live near buildings. However, in the 26 years that we've been here, this is the first and only one that I have ever seen in the yard. Next one.
I love those eyes.
I think there's actually 4, but you can only see 3.
Ah.
Okay, so this was interesting to me because I have this wonderful, lovely rosemary bush, and it was blooming, but I've never really looked so close at it to see what the flowers are like. You kind of see a little bit of white on it, and that was it. And then I finally decided maybe I ought to look a little bit closer, and then I looked closer with the camera, and it's quite amazing how much detail is in that tiny, tiny flower that may be about 3/8 to 5/8 of an inch big. And the rosemary is native to the Mediterranean. Of course, we know that it's used as culinary condiment to make body perfumes and for potential health benefits. The other thing that I found very interesting about rosemary is that it's in the mint family. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? Huh.
Who knew? Okay, next one, please.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay, now we all know probably what this flower is. This is a bleeding heart. And this one grows in my yard. It blooms for a little bit, and then it fades away. And the interesting part about this that I found out is that it is a part of the poppy family. It's native to Siberia, northern China, Korea, and Japan. Next one. So this is a shy violet. This little flower, my husband planted some violets under a bush that we had, a viburnum bush. And we took the viburnums out finally. The violets didn't bloom while they were under the viburnum bush, but once the viburnum were gone, they began to spread and proliferate. And this little one I captured after a rainfall. Next one. So this is silver ragwort is one of its names. The other one is Dusty Miller. I have a whole patch of these in my yard. But the one thing that I've never noticed until I decided to look closer with the camera is the way the buds are formed, and it's almost like they have silk over the top of them as they form before they bloom out into a yellow flower. Now these particular shrubs, they're little shrubs, are native to the Mediterranean, so they do quite well here because our climate is basically what it's called a modified Mediterranean climate. I'm not quite sure what the modified part means, but that's what the books say that we are, is a modified Mediterranean climate. Next.
Ermin, I love that mats that you have in the back of these photos. The colors are just beautifully complementary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And this, of course, I guess everybody would recognize this is a grass seed, but I never knew how intricate that they were until I took this photograph. Now, this is not a, grass seed for your lawn carpeting. This is a wild grass seed that basically the ones that grow up to 2 to 3 feet, and then they have that nice spike growing up out of them. So this was one that I let grow in the yard, and fortunately for me, it turned out to be a beautiful array of seeds with all their little intricacies that could be captured on film. Next, please. This is an autumn fern fiddlehead. It's native to East Asia, from China and Japan, south to the Philippines, growing in light woodland shade on low mountains or hills. This one happens to be growing next to my deck, and I just loved the beautiful colors, the orange and then the intricate, again, this has those intricate fibers that seem to hold it all together until it flares out into the frond that becomes a little bit of an kind of russet colored frond as it matures. Next one. Of course, everybody knows this one. This is a dandelion head. It's native to temperate areas of the Northern Hemisphere. Now, I didn't know this, but they say all of the plant is edible. I'm just not sure I would enjoy eating that part. But if you are interested in having some of this in your salad, be sure that it is the real dandelion. It should not have hairy leaves and be on a single stem. Next. Now this is a part of the dandelion. I'm calling this the dandelion puff, but it looks like wind or just nature itself has taken the top portion off of the dandelion and left this particular pattern. And those in the center are basically the seeds of the dandelion. And it just formed such a beautiful structure that I couldn't help myself but take that photograph. Next.
And honeybees love dandelions.
The which? The bees?
Honeybees. Yeah.
Ah. Well, there's plenty in my yard during the springtime. So.
Leave them. The bees will love you for it.
Well, you know, I've seen the deer come and eat the dandelion, and I encourage them to do that.
Sure.
Okay, this is a bracken fern that is about to be born. And the one thing that I have discovered about bracken fern is that it is the widest distribution of any fern in the world. Who knew that?
Lovely. That's the bracken. That's the one that dies back in the wintertime, right?
Yes. It turns brown, but it's kind of a pest in the yard because it will pop up in places you don't want it. It spreads to, I haven't figured out how it spreads, but I think it spreads underground. I mean, I keep pulling them up and you don't get any roots on it, but eventually, you know, it pops up here, pops up there. And so, you know, it just has to be removed from where you don't want it.
Yeah. The foliage is gorgeous.
The foliage is gorgeous.
Yeah. So next.
Next, please. Okay, and this is a thistle bud. Now, this is interesting about the thistle bud is that I've had thistles in the yard before, and since they're prickly, I have gotten rid of them before they even had a chance to do what it is that they want to do. But this year, I left it. And so I started photographing it from the beginning where it was this bud with all its little spikes on it. But to look at it, it's got so much intricacy in it, including the leaves with all the little hairs on the leaves and the stems and all these little spikies on the bud itself, that I just decided that I was going to take the maturity as it happened of the thistle. So we have 3 more photographs of the thistle here.
Okay.
The other thing that I want to tell you about the thistle is that it is the floral emblem for Scotland, which I did not know. Some of you may have, as well as the emblem for the Encyclopedia Britannica. And thistles are noteworthy for their high wildlife value. producing such things as copious floral resources for pollinators, nourishing seeds for birds like the goldfinch, foliage for butterfly larvae, and down for the lining of birds' nests. So I have decided after that I'm going to encourage thistles in the yard. Now this, of course, is the thistle flower. So out of that bud, this gorgeous, gorgeous, spiky, but it's not spiky to where it hurts you kind of foliage that comes out. And of course, you know, we like artichokes, and artichokes are a thistle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next. Now this one I call thistle glow, because once the flower fades, this is what develops. And all those little fibers pick up the light and create the rainbow. And I just couldn't help myself but try to capture that rainbow in that thistle flower. Next.
Beautiful iridescence. Oh my gosh.
And once the flower actually completely blooms itself out, this is what develops. And I guess this is what they call the down that the birds would use for their, you know, construction of their nests. But these are actually the seeds that develop. And this whole process is just absolutely amazing and gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, are there any questions? Because that is the end of the show.
That's the end of our show.
That's the end of the show.
I have a question, Irma. What lens are you using for most of those?
I'm using, Nikon calls their macro lens a micro lens. It's a 60 millimeter micro lens.
Well, they're really nice. I really enjoy macro as well, and it's just like opens up a whole nother world that we often don't see. And I like the touch that you gave all of them with the nice borders that really added to it. So really nicely done.
Thank you very much. I was listening to a fellow who was talking about macro photography, and one of the things that he said was that if you wanted to get good macro photography of insects and stuff, that what you want to do is you want to go out early in the morning when it's really cool, because they're in a torpor.
Yeah. Okay.
So they were probably just huddled in there trying to keep warm.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never actually tried what I'm going to be describing right now, but I've read that some photographers will capture insects and temporarily put them in the refrigerator or freezer. That slows them down, and then bring them out, and you have more control over them while they're kind of thawing out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I haven't tried that. I'm not sure that I want to go there. I think I'd rather do it the natural way.
Sure.
If I can get myself up early enough in the morning.